I want to officially welcome everyone to our Chai Mitzvah virtual event, Coming Home Teshuvah. Some of you are members of Chai Mitzvah groups, and many of you are familiar with Chai Mitzvah. But for those of you who are not, here's a quick overview of who we are and what we do. Chai Mitzvah is a program to enhance Jewish engagement and build community through small group networks. Like a book group, Chai Mitzvah groups meet monthly for meaningful text-based conversations. Each person in the group also builds their Jewish bucket list by adopting or deepening a ritual or spiritual practice, independent study of their choosing, and engaging in a social action project. At the end of the year, we celebrate the Chai Mitzvah journey, and each participant receives a certificate of completion. You can start a small Chai Mitzvah group with some friends, either in person or virtually, or you can join one of our virtual groups that meet monthly to discuss different topics. I can answer any questions you have at the end of our event, and I'll send out a more detailed information in a short follow-up email. My contact information may or may not be on the screen because I'm not sure if I'm sharing it properly, but it could be. If not, you'll get it when I send the follow-up email. But for now, let's just enjoy the signature Chai Mitzvah experience of text-based conversation. And we're going to begin by ushering in the season with a shofar blast. Reb Deb.
Okay. Howard, I can't see you, but I know that you're waiting to be called. So we're going to open with a wake-up call, which is Tekiah. Hey, thank you. So we are officially in session. And I think it's always important to bookend learning or study sessions. So the bookend is that we will open with a Tekiah and we will close with a Tekiah Gedolah. And the time and space in between those two blasts is a holy container when we can study together and learn about this really sacred practice of Teshuvah. And Teshuvah is pronounced and, said in two different ways. So many of us know it as Teshuvah, Teshuvah, and many of us also just call it Teshuvah. And so, which is not wrong because it takes the root of the shuv, the turn, which means to turn, out of the Teshuvah and really just shortens it. So we're going to be looking tonight at a practice of shuving, a holy practice that we can explore that teaches us about taking the time at this time of year during Elul and with the Tishrei holy days coming up to turn and return, to really have what we call a homecoming, because it's an opportunity. It's a wonderful time of the year, and it's a wonderful opportunity we have to return home to other people we may have taken distance from or become estranged from, to come home to ourselves, the parts of ourselves that maybe are not in alignment with how we'd like to live our lives, and to come home to the entity that we consider the divine or God, or however we envision that for ourselves. And so we take this time to recalibrate, to realign ourselves, to get back on Derech Eretz, to get back on the right path. And maybe some of us might consider after tonight picking up a spiritual practice of Teshuvah, because the one day a year that we go in for Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we think about this process, if you exercise or meditate or have any other kind of practice at all, that if you do it once a year, you're going to be pretty crummy at doing it. But if you practice it every day, or mostly every day, you will probably practice it with more facility and be able to feel as if you really own it. And so in order to be effective and to make this our spiritual practice, just the way we might meditate or do yoga or whatever we might do, we need to learn how we can practice it. What can we really do as we go forward? And so at this time, we're going to begin with text 1. And if Nina, if you can put text 1 up on the screen for us.
Oops.
We're going to be working with this text for probably the next 15 minutes.
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Me, not well, but maybe other people have better eyesight than I do. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer who would read text 1 to us, if somebody can do that. And you'd have to pick them because I can't see everybody.
Okay, so Let's see. Would anybody raise your hand if you'd like to read? I'm going to scroll. Oh, okay, Marilyn, please read. Thanks. Are you able to see it, Marilyn? Oh, you're
Just
muted.
unmute.
Unmute yourself. There you go. Can you? I think you've done. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, it's the same one that's in the booklet, right?
Yes, or do you see it on the screen as well?
Yeah, but not as well.
Okay, great, fine.
Teshuvah and Yom Kippur only atone for sins between an individual and God. For example, a person who ate a forbidden fruit or engaged in forbidden sexual relations and the like. However, sins between one person and another, for example, someone who injures a colleague, curses a colleague, steals from another, or the like, will never be forgiven until one gives his or her colleague what is owed and appeases him or her. It must be emphasized that even if one restores the money that is owed, one must still appease the injured party and ask for forgiveness. Even if a person only upset a colleague by saying certain things, she or he must appease and approach the injured party repeatedly until forgiveness is granted.
Thank you, Marilyn. So this is from Maimonides' Laws of Teshuvah. This is a 12th century writing that we're looking at. And this text that I've selected falls under the first category, which is coming home to others, repairing relationships with other people. We're going to look in 3 dimensions tonight, coming home to others, coming home to self, and coming home to God, just as I said in the introduction. So we have a question for breakout groups for this particular text. And the question says that though this text is focused on the theme of repentance, forgiveness also is a concept that goes along with that. Though other religions have different understandings, in Jewish thought and practice, forgiveness can only be granted after true repentance takes place. In your experience, when have repentance and forgiveness gone hand in hand? And when have only one or the other taken place? So we're looking at repentance and forgiveness. Have they gone hand in hand for you, or has only one of those 2 taken place?
You need to meet.
So I'm putting this question into the group chat because when we break up into groups, you'll be able to access the question so that you'll be able to discuss it together without forgetting what it is.
How many groups are we going to go for in the breakout?
I think 5.
Okay.
I don't have 4 or 5 people in each one.
Okay, and would they get a 1-minute warning when the room is about to close? You'll have a 1-minute warning.
Yes, and we'll have about 7 or 8 minutes to discuss. Okay.
Okay. See you soon.
See you.
So maybe we would want to take a minute or 2 for, 3 or 4 comments before we move on to the next text. We won't have time to hear from everybody, but if people have any insights or want to share part of the discussion, we do have time for a few comments before we go on. So again, if you want to speak, just raise your hand and then unmute yourself, and please feel free to share.
Maybe someone from each group would like to kind of share what their group thought about the question. Yes, Sheila.
We had situations of where somebody asked forgiveness and the other person would not forgive. And it ended the relationship on those occasions. And we decided it's ego. It's ego if you cannot forgive. A person says they're sorry, they didn't mean it, or extenuating circumstances, I didn't mean to hurt you or slight you or this or that. And the other person cannot see that and go beyond their own hurt feelings. And then somebody in our group brought up the capacity of the parents who have lost children to gun violence in schools. And many of them say, I forgive. And the depth of forgiveness. The members of the church, the Black church, they all said they forgave.
Yeah.
I got shot.
Thank you. Do we have another group that would like to share some insights, a different group from the one, I don't know who you were with, but anybody else? Sister Eleanor Francis, please.
Kamala. Well, our group was grappling with whether the other person has to be repentant in order for us to forgive. And, we didn't really, I don't think, if anybody else wants to add to this, I don't think we really answered that question.
It's a very good question. I don't know if anyone has a thought before we move forward on that question. It's an open end. It's sitting there, like on the table, so to speak. Meryl?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we touched on is that to have, to experience real teshuvah, and the complete forgiveness, that there needs to be remorse and regret in your heart. You really kind of, yes, you can go through the motions of asking forgiveness, but it seems like it's coupled together.
I was in that group, so I'm keeping quiet. Anybody else from another group or?
Delia.
Can I just ask, how does anybody know you're I mean, the only person who knows whether you're repentant is yourself and God.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say something there? Because if you're truly repentant of something, you will not repeat that action again when placed in a similar circumstance. So the person that you may have offended, well, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to say wronged or insulted, but the person who you may have offended, if you're in a similar situation with them again, will you repeat the same thing or will you go down a different road? And that's really the key part of the process of teshuvah, is if you're faced with it again, what are you going to do in the face of it the next time? Have you learned anything? Yeah.
I think that you know the difference because this weight is lifted, that somehow you've been carrying this around, you're embarrassed, you don't want to talk to the person, whatever. And all of a sudden you said, I really have done all I can do to make this situation right. And I can at least live with myself, and I have done what I know God expects of me. And you will feel different. And then in a lot of cases, that moves the other person to say, she must have really meant that, or he must have really meant that, because I can tell she's acting different. She's talking different. She's not whatever.
That's a great point. Thank you very much for making that. We'll take one more and then let's go to the second text. Is there someone who hasn't had a turn to share that would like to add a comment before we go on?
So Shiri and Delia both had their hands up.
Yeah.
But then
You,
now neither. Oh, now Delia, you do, but no, you don't. You're muted, so I can't tell.
okay, Shiri's open though, right?
Yes.
I'll just represent my group as best I can. That what I noticed is that when one of the people told the story that she did try to ask for forgiveness and the other person did not allow it, and that it sounded like it was very painful, that it wasn't reciprocated on the other side. Takes a lot of courage, and you have to kind of go in knowing that it may not be accepted. It may or may not.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I was thinking too that the process of asking for forgiveness, of saying you're sorry, slicha, when you bang into somebody on the bus in Israel, you say slicha, I'm sorry, we have to practice that. That's a spiritual practice. Asking, for forgiveness or saying you're sorry is not something that comes easy. Maybe to some people it does, and you have to wonder how sincere the intent is and if they really are, grounded in the process of what they're doing. But we have to practice that because it's something that we need to learn to do. It just doesn't come naturally. Not the deep sorry that we're talking about. I'm not talking about just banging into somebody and it's a small thing. But I mean, how do you really work with that? And you're in the store, you're shopping, you've got your cart, and you're sort of, in your own world, and somebody is maybe bent over at the shelf and they're looking for something, or you don't see them and you bump into them with your cart. And you could say, barely without looking at them, sorry, and keep going. You know, you just kind of plow on ahead. Or do you stop and look at them? And do you really feel what it would be like for you if they ran over your foot in ShopRite, you know, and say, I'm sincerely sorry, and look them in the eyes. I'm really sorry. That was my mistake, and I hope that you're okay.
Or you could basically change the practice totally, and as you're walking down the aisle and you see somebody you may bump into, say, excuse me. And usually they'll move aside because that's a polite way of asking them to move aside so you can get through.
All right. Or you could walk around, you could walk the other way, or you can walk
Right,
around.
I do that sometimes. I just walk and go down another aisle.
Nina, would you place the next text up? Thank you, everybody, for your comments, and let's go forward. Gloria, we got to move quickly. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say, and I think I said this
showing me something, Michael?
in our
Go
group,
ahead, Gloria. Go
I
ahead.
think that we have, this is a very big responsibility that we have in terms of our Jewish practice and identity, in terms of if we want to make the world a better place, it is our responsibility to have these qualities of, want to call them godliness or respect for humankind, so that it reflects in how the words that we use and the way in which we show our humbleness when we say we're sorry, or so I think it has a bigger picture for us to look at in terms of.
Yeah, I think, you know, you're right. If we're carrying B'Tselem Elohim, you know, and we're carrying a spark of God in us, and we're made in the image of God, you know, as you think about that, I just got this image of like God, however you would envision God, you know, banging into somebody, and, you know, would God stop and say, I'm terribly sorry, I hope I haven't hurt you? Or would God just plow on, you know, to the vegetable counter and keep going? I mean, so you bring up something really, I think, important to consider. We'll take the next text. Let's go for the next one. And let's ask for a volunteer to read. And now we're in the category of coming home to self. Okay, we were in coming home to other. Now we're coming home to self, and we could sure use a reader. So.
Don't see any hands up.
Yeah, Gloria's hand is up. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Coming home.
Gloria. Great.
Certain sages include Teshuvah among the entities created before the world itself. The implications of this remarkable statement is that Teshuvah is a universal primordial phenomenon. In such a context, it has two meanings. One is that it's embedded in the root structure of the world. The other, that before humanity was created, humans were given the possibility of changing the course of their lives. In this latter sense, Teshuvah is the highest expression of a person's capacity to choose freely. It is the manifestation of the divine in humankind. A person can extricate himself or herself from the binding web of his or her life, from the chain of causality that otherwise compels him or her to follow a path of no return. Woo!
Thank you. So this text is a very, very interesting text. It's from a book called The 13 Petaled Rose that some of you may have heard of or read, by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, who just passed away August 7th, 2020, and was an amazing Israeli Chabad Hasidic scholar, wrote, you know, translated the Talmud, has, you know, been an author, a philosopher, everything you could possibly think of, held in extremely, extremely high esteem. And he, you know, we're going to try to parse out and figure out what to do with this text. The question is, he says that the centrality of the notion of Teshuvah to Jewish tradition is made manifest by rabbinic suggestion that the possibility of changing the course of our lives was given even before there were humans on earth, that the process of Teshuvah existed before there was even humanity here. And what makes this a Jewish notion? And does it strike you as a frightening or a humbling notion? He says, as it does me, and if so, why? So, you know, just to even think about the fact that the concept was there before humanity were even existed. And do you think it's a very Jewish notion, this notion? And does it strike you as frightening or humbling or awesome? And if so, why? So I think we're going back into the breakout groups that we were in. And we have, how long do we have, Nina?
We have 8 minutes, and the question is in the chat box. So if you need to be reminded of it, it is there. Most people are muted now, so remember to unmute yourselves and have a very good discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was a very provoking question. It really was. It was a very thought-provoking question. And I would really be curious how people have circled around with that question. So any brief comments, because I'm watching the clock and we have another text that we want to get to as well before we close. Other thoughts? Anyone want to contribute anything to this one? Are you humbled? Are you in awe? Are you, frightened by this concept, and what is it saying in terms of Jewish, Judaism? I mean, is it a Jewish notion to you? Could you accept it as part of sort of our part and parcel? Deborah?
I think the general consensus in our group is that it's a very empowering notion. And we talked a bit about, in contrast, the idea of original sin. And, with Judaism, there's always the possibility of redemption, of change, of, righting a wrong. Whereas in other religions, there may be more of a feeling of you're damned, and I think that's a very optimistic and empowering view of the world.
Yeah, thank you for that, Deborah. One or two other comments before we move into the next text. Anybody have anything that their group came up with that you'd like to share? Tough question. I don't know, Nina, what do you think? You have any opinion on this one?
So actually, this is one of my favorite texts. I love the idea of things that were created that affect humanity, that were created separate from humanity. Like the notion also that rest on Shabbat is not the absence of work, but is actually something that was created. The same thing with this. I find that idea really fascinating. And the idea that you can, that doing Teshuvah gives you, like you said, empowerment, is a very empowering notion. So that's what I think.
And also for me, it makes me think again about how we're working in partnership with God, that God created humanity to be partners with God in carrying out the repair of the world, doing a tikkun and working on ourselves and remembering sort of what image we carry into this world. Are we going to be, as I had mentioned in our group, that, at this time of the year, the liturgy talks about the God who is forgiving, compassionate, kind. I mean, all of that when we recite Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'Chanun, 3 times in front of the open ark, we're really enumerating all those qualities of forgiveness and compassion and mercy and, everything that we attribute to God and that we reflect back on ourselves as made in the image of God. So just something to think about. It's a tough text. I mean, it's not a text to be solved or resolved. It's a text to ponder. And if okay, I'd like to go to the next text so that we have a minute to take a think about that one. And this is going to quote a piece of the Avinu Malkeinu, a small piece of the Avinu Malkeinu. So it just has the line, Avinu Malkeinu, return us, Achatzirenu, in full Teshuvah to you, from the High Holy Day liturgy. I mean, so, which many people won't be hearing this piece this year because it falls on Shabbat and it's traditionally not read on Shabbat. So Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, or our Mother, our Queen, if you want to change it up, or our Sovereign, however you want to sort of move forward with this language. Return us in full Teshuvah to you. And the question is, how do you interpret the Avinu Malkeinu passage in light of your study of the midah of return, the trait of return? How might this be a new interpretation for you? And this focuses on coming home to God. So we're in the third dimension of the three aspects of Teshuvah. How do you interpret this in light of your study of Teshuvah, what we've done tonight, and how might this be a new way for you to interpret it? And we'll go into the breakout rooms. And this is our last text for group study.
Okay, so I am going to open all the rooms, and let's make sure that the question is in the chat box. Okay, there we go.
We lost Michelle in mid-sentence. She was expounding, but let's regroup. And any thoughts on this one, if people would like to share? People need to be muted because we're picking up a little bit of interference in the background. But if someone would like to speak, just raise your hand and then unmute yourself, and we'll take a couple of comments before we look at the last text selection that we have as a group discussion. Any thoughts on this?
Well, we have to come back to God. We have to make the first step, and then God will come back to us.
But it's a relief to know we'll be accepted back. I mean, that's like a good thing. We don't have to worry, is this, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Is there going to be any, reciprocity? Will we be able to dance together, God and I? I mean, seriously, how do you think about that? But it's sort of a relief to know if you're sincere in your process, and that's the key part, and you vow to not repeat it again, you'll be accepted back.
But it has to be more than just talking.
That's right. It has to be the action.
You have to do the walking and the action to
Right.
show that you're really
Right.
repentant.
Yeah, you got to talk the talk and walk the walk, and that's the part of this that is the complete part of the process. So that's a good point. Others, before we go forward with our final series of quotes that we wanted you to look at and consider?
I'm not.
Yeah, you were unmuted. You got to unmute yourself again.
Okay. As I understand it, with my small understanding, God is already with us. It's just that if we have strayed, we don't feel that. So it's not like God is waiting to return to us, and
Right.
when we become good again,
Right.
God is always with us. We've just
Yeah,
set
it's up
some
to us to
barriers.
we've got to make that reconnection. I mean, the presence is there, which I think is what you're saying, but we missed the access point. Sort of,
Right.
we were going on the highway when we got off at the wrong exit. And if we can reconnect with the exit, the path will be straight and we can go on together on that, to the destination. So I like your, that was a really wonderful closing comment. And I am comfortable leaving it with that because we want to share some final quotes with you. So thank you for that good closing comment. We have a couple of quotes to look at, which we're going to share on the screen. And this is a large group sharing. Please take a look at these quotes and notice that if you look at them going down, we have the English as well as the Hebrew. They actually, I keep pointing at the screen, but it's not helping. They actually spell out Teshuvah. If you look at the letters, Teshuvah, going down. From the Psalms, I have set Adonai before me always. From Leviticus, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. From Proverbs, in all your ways acknowledge God. Walk humbly with your God, from the prophet Micha. And so, Reb Zusia says, therefore resolve to act accordingly so that your repentance may be sincere. So we're looking at these verses that constitute the essence of Judaism. And notice that the first letter, if you read Hebrew, spells Teshuvah. If you go down in that, it's an acrostic. But the question for this is, which one of these could be your mantra? If you were choosing one of these as your spiritual mantra, which one would it be? And I think we have to leave this up, right? So we're going to have to just deal with the column on the side. How does that work? I don't know.
Oh, I can see everyone if you need me to tell you who's raising their hand.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's just go a quick one on this. Which one would you choose for people who have chosen one? And we'll just do a quick whip around from those people who want to share.
Deb, Reb Deb.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask why Zusha, did he specifically go through to find these to spell Shuba, or did it just happen to be that way? That's my first question before I go on.
Well, I wonder, you know what? I wonder about that. And I wonder if, these verses then just seem to make the right order, which would be very sort of,
I think they looked for it. I think they looked for it like we do the acrostics with our names.
Right. I mean, I don't think
you look for something that fits in.
Yeah, I don't think it's random. I don't think it was a random accident. But
Right.
Did you want to tell us which one did you pick one, please?
They wanted to emphasize Teshuvah.
Yeah. Lisa?
I know I have set Adonai before me always.
Okay, so you picked the one from the Psalms. Okay, anybody else have a favorite?
I would also pick that I have set Adonai before me always.
Okay, we've got two so far running with this one.
And I'll,
Your hand up, and Lori has her hand up. Let's do Sherry and then Lori.
okay, I was going to go with the Shiviti at this point. That would hold me, but I really think it's very important to remember V'ahavta le'acha kamocha. You should love your neighbor. In other words, understand that we are all equal, and that person's opinion is not less or more important than your own or anything else.
Surely need that now.
Lori, you had your hand
Lori,
up?
yeah, Lori.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I picked also that I set Adonai before me always. And then I noticed the Hebrew that it is Shaviti, which we've been saying, in the whole month of Elul. So I just thought that was interesting. Without knowingly, that was the one that I was drawn to.
Right. Michelle also has her hand up.
For me, I chose, well, there's two, but the last two, to resolve to act accordingly. Because for me, God is always present. God, I know that I have to be, final goal is to God. I know also that God is within me. So I have to resolve to always make my actions appropriate with what I'm saying I'm going to do. And also the walk humbly, because in a class that I just finished, I just loved the one on humility, about no more than your place and less than your space. And for me, that is probably the one goal that I'll always have in life, is to remember that balance between place and space.
Thank you, Michelle. Any others, Nina? Because I can't see.
It looks like Rosita has her hand up.
Yes, Nina. I think I cannot pick one right away. And the reason I can't do that is because one it falls under the other. What I mean with that is, if I can show love my neighbor, I'm doing something good. If I do something good, I'm with God. So everything goes like folding one thing to the other. So to say that I'm going to pick one, it's really hard. And I think no one really can pick one. So then you will walk humbly with your God. Of course you do that because you are with God all the time. So it's really hard to pick one. And I might be wrong with that, but I think it goes, everything goes, interact one with another.
Others, Nina?
I'm looking to see if there are any more hands.
Yes.
Sister Eleanor?
I have set Adonai before me always, because I think if I set Adonai before me always, all the others will follow.
Yeah, I think it's a given.
Yeah, that was the one I picked too, because the others fall into place. If that's your model for how you're going to live your life, in my eyes, then the others will sort of follow. Do we have, yeah.
You can
Any
say
others?
you can say the same thing about resolve to act accordingly.
But that's not a choice. It's not a choice. It's the closer. The ones with the dots next to them are the choices. You should be wholehearted with Adonai your God. The ones just with the little bullet points. Yeah.
Well,
and his Zusia's comment is just the closer. He's like, you know, and resolve to act accordingly. That
Right.
you know.
All of those.
Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Wendy has her hand up.
Okay.
I like the first one, which is sort of hidden under the opening.
Yes, it is.
But the you shall be wholehearted with Adonai your God, because I find that as the year progresses, I get sort of broken, and so this idea of becoming whole again is that sort of the start over and start from a place of wholeness and always try to get back there. That has a lot of meaning with that coming home feeling.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
And Shiri has her hand up as well.
I just want to say that I don't understand that as the wholehearted sounds like part of the Shema b'chol levavcha, and the tamim tiyem Adonai Elohecha is you should be innocent and beginner's mind with God. I think it's a little bit different, but they're both.
Yeah. Yeah, that one sort of got a little hidden under the.
Yeah, I didn't even notice it.
Under the quote. So at this time, we will wrap up, and we would like to wrap up with a special New Year sort of kavanah, if you will, an intention for the new year that it be hopefully a different year than the year that we are leaving for us. Even though the secular and the Hebrew they don't match, but that this be a year of tikkun, healing for the world and for us, as partners with God in the world, that we can help affect that tikkun. And, our prayers that you are all, inscribed and sealed in the book of life in the year going forward, for good health, for prosperity, for a full heart, a heart full of all good things. And, that we all work toward making this world a better place. And with that in mind, I ask Howard to give us the parting strong Tekiah Gedolah. Tekiah Gedolah. Josh, beautifully done. And, if that was not a wake-up call, certainly, then you need to be woken up with something stronger. I don't know what. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you on our future calls. We've got a lot of other great programs coming up. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, everybody. Thank you so much.